Martin, I was taught growing up to wash my hands, keep clean, and I did that because if I didn't, I would get sick and disease and everything else. And of course, when you look back in history, when we had no sewer systems, when we drank the water that basically ran into where we did our other businesses, we had lots of problems. So being clean was a big step forward, but I think we may have taken it a little too far.
There's a difference between hygiene and phobia. Yes, there are dangerous microbes in the environment that we should avoid. They're primarily in the feces of us, ourselves, and creatures that live near or with us. And we do not want to get infected by parasites. At the same time, when we evolved, or as we evolved, our bodies and our immune systems have created defenses against the hostile environment. And we need to build that. In fact, when we're born, we're practically blank. As a child is emerging through the birth canal from the mother, he or she gets actually injected, inoculated with the microbial life that lives all along that birth canal. So the first thing that you could note is that now that a third of the births in industrial societies are by cesarean section in a sterile environment where the child actually is not going through this normal pathway, they are not getting that. Normally, your nose and mouth would be filled with whatever's in your mother's birth canal. And that would be the first stage of getting inoculated. Your immune system builds on it. Actually, what should be said is this: we humans are actually a traveling boat for millions, no, trillions of microbes. In fact, the numbers I heard was that we're about 10 trillion cells and 100 trillion microbes living inside and on top of us, like on my skin, in my eyes, in my mouth, and my gut, and everywhere else. So that system is what designs our healthy gut. Our ability to process food is highly dependent on the microbes that are living in our gut. This is a very important point. If you have the wrong mix of the microbes in the gut, you can create all kinds of problems. For example, autism is tied with Clostridium difficile being overpopulated in the gut, and the toxins that Clostridium makes and releases, as in Clostridium poop, is then causing neurological changes that are associated with the autistic spectrum problems. It's important to create a mix of microbes in the gut that is right for the environment in which you live and for the person that you're going to become. To solve it, we have been forced to eat dirt, as in modern dirt. In our attempt to fix the problems, we need to now feed ourselves with probiotics, prebiotics. Prebiotic is that which the probiotic eats. So probiotic is a microbe such as lactobacillus or bifidus or something like that. And that creature actually requires fructooligosaccharides, which is fibers that the bacterium lives on so that it can further process the food that's coming through the canal and take nutrients out of it. To give you an example, the vitamin K2 that's so required for healthy life is actually produced by the bacteria living in your gut.
So when we use antibacterial soap, so when we have a little bit of an illness and they give us an antibiotic, we are basically destroying all of the living life forms, good and bad, that are on our skin or in our body. And then, of course, like any field where you go and you just take everything that's growing there naturally and rip it all out and just leave it, weeds pop up. In other words, the bacteria that you don't necessarily want. And the parasites run in, like the rats that come and live there. The parasites will also jump in, and all of a sudden you're overwhelmed and you have things like candida and all these other chronic illnesses that we don't know what to do about.
Right. I mean, generally we lump it under the leaky gut. That's a term that's been used colloquially, but it really means that the integrity of the barrier that's supposed to protect the fragile inside from the hostile outside is more permeable than it should be. One of the biggest culprits next to antibiotics is chlorine. Chlorinated water, the reason we put chlorine in water is to kill pathogenic bacteria. But if we leave the chlorine in the water that we drink, in the gut, it will kill everything too. So you'll end up actually wiping out the microbiome by drinking chlorinated water.
So we live in a world that has lots of wars, World War One, World War Two, and so on and so on. And in our body, we have another war going on, which is between the good guy bacteria and the bad guy bacteria. And our society and our environment is geared towards wiping out the good guy bacteria and allowing the bad guy bacteria to kind of take over. And by having a sterile body and a sterile environment, we're assisting in that destructive process.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the abandoned city lot between two houses or three houses. And there we are looking at mounds of dirt and weeds and just it never comes up as rose garden with carrots and cabbages. It just is a mess.
That's right. Okay, so this has been about why you don't want to have a sterile body and why you don't want to have a sterile environment. So we want you to be thinking about what sort of water are you drinking? What sort of soap are you using? What sort of medication are you using? Are these all contributing to the destruction of the bacteria that's good for you as opposed to the destruction of the bacteria that's just bad for you? And in our next lecture, we're going to be talking about heavy metals, which is sort of the next level of destructiveness that comes from our environment.